In 1981, a computer entered a game it had never played before. No practice, no training, no help. It beat every human champion in the country, and it did it again the next year. So the humans in charge did something no one expected. They banned it. This is not a story about ChatGPT. This is not a story about 2023. This happened over 40 years ago, and almost nobody knows about it. It's 1981. There is no internet, no smartphones. Computers fill entire rooms and run slower than a modern calculator. At Stanford University, a researcher named Douglas Lenat is working on something strange. Most computer programs in 1981 could only do exactly what they were told. Follow the rules, nothing more. But Lenat built something different. A program called Eurisko, a Greek word meaning, I discover. Eurisko wasn't just following rules. It could write new rules for itself. It could look at its own thinking, decide what worked and what didn't, and improve itself. A little bit like learning but done by a machine in 1981. This wasn't Lenat's first attempt at something like this. Years earlier, he had built a program called Automated Mathematician, which tried to discover new ideas in math on its own. It worked well enough that Lenat won a major award for it, but it had one big problem. It could only work inside one narrow subject. Once it ran out of interesting math ideas, it had nothing left to do. So Lenat built Eurisko to fix that weakness. Instead of being locked into one subject, Eurisko carried a set of general rules of thumb, the kind of instincts an expert might use. And it could rewrite those rules itself when they stopped working. Nobody was fully sure it would work. Lenat himself admitted the first 5 years of this research produced almost nothing useful. Some days it felt like a failed experiment. Then something changed. Lenat rebuilt the way the program represented knowledge. And suddenly, Eurisko started improving itself in ways he didn't expect. He needed a real test, something hard, something unpredictable, something no one could accuse of being rigged in the computer's favor. So he gave Eurisko a strange new job: play a war game. The game was called Traveler, Trillion Credit Squadron. It was a serious, popular tabletop war game. Players designed entire fleets of spaceships, following complicated rules about cost, weapons, armor, speed, and fuel. Every ship had to be built within a shared budget, 1,000,000,000,000 credits, and then those fleets would battle each other round after round until a champion was crowned. This wasn't a casual game you played once and forgot. The people who played it were serious hobbyists who had studied the rulebook for years. They knew every trick, every strategy, every shortcut. Fleet design had almost become its own art form, with unwritten rules about what a good ship looked like. Lenat had an idea. What if he let Eurisko design a fleet, using only the rulebook and its own reasoning? No human battle experience, no copying old strategies, no imitating what champions had built before, just cold logic running through thousands of possible designs overnight, testing them against each other in simulations, and keeping whatever worked. Each morning, Lenat would look at what Eurisko had built, remove the worst ideas, and let it keep evolving. He later estimated the results were something like 60% his own guidance and 40% the machine's own discovery. Then he entered the fleet into the United States National Championship. When Eurisko's fleet showed up, people laughed. The ships looked wrong. Some had almost no ability to move at all. Some designs broke every unwritten rule that good players followed. Too many small weapons, strange armor choices, ship after ship that looked like a joke instead of a serious weapon of war. The fleet had 96 ships in total, and most of them were nearly identical, a strange, ugly class the tournament would later remember by name. Nobody took it seriously. Then the battles began. Round after round, Eurisko's strange fleet won. It kept winning. By the end of the tournament, this computer program, that had never even watched the game being played before, was crowned national champion. Lenat later pointed out something important. No one connected to the program had ever played this game before the tournament. There were no practice rounds. It won cold, on its very first attempt, against opponents who had trained for years. The other players were stunned. How does a machine with no experience beat people who had spent years mastering the game? The answer: Eurisko wasn't thinking like a human. It didn't care about looking smart or looking normal. It didn't care about tradition or elegance or what a fleet was supposed to look like. It only cared about one thing: winning, using the exact rules written on the page. And because it wasn't limited by human assumptions, it found weaknesses in the rulebook that no human had ever noticed, simply because no human had ever thought to look for them. The tournament organizers weren't happy. A machine had just beaten their best human players using strategies nobody intended to be possible. So for the next year, in 1982, they changed the rules, specifically to close the exact loophole Eurisko had used the year before. Problem solved, right? Lenat entered Eurisko again. This time, the AI studied the new rules from scratch and found a completely new weakness, one nobody had planned for. It discovered a way to let its own ships get destroyed in the middle of battle in a way that actually helped it score, turning what looked like a disadvantage into a hidden advantage. Once again, Eurisko designed a fleet that looked strange, that experienced players didn't respect, and once again, it won. Eurisko won the national championship again. 2 years, 2 completely different rule sets, rewritten specifically to stop it. 2 championships. By now, the organizers had a real problem on their hands. This wasn't a fun tournament anymore if a computer could show up every year, with zero experience, and outthink everyone using logic no human competitor could even follow, let alone beat. Word of what was happening had spread. This strange story about a self-improving computer program crashing a human hobby competition had even reached serious research circles, and people in the defense research world started paying attention to what Lenat was building. But inside the tournament itself, the mood was closer to dread than excitement. So the tournament officials made an announcement. If Eurisko entered again and won, the entire championship would be shut down completely. No more tournament for anyone. Lenat had a real choice in front of him: enter again and risk ending a tournament that hundreds of people genuinely loved, just to prove a point, or step back and let the humans have their game back. He chose to step back. He didn't enter Eurisko a third time. As a kind of consolation prize, he was given an honorary title instead of a trophy: Grand Admiral. Eurisko never competed in the tournament again, and the championship continued on afterward, without the machine that had twice made it obsolete. Think about what just happened. In 1981, a machine with no training, no past experience, and no human intuition walked into a human competition and won using logic humans hadn't considered. It won again after the rules were rewritten specifically to stop it. And in the end, humans had to ban it. Not because it cheated, not because it broke any rule, but because it was simply operating on a different kind of thinking, and no one could compete with that on equal footing. Today, when people talk about AI beating humans, they usually mean AlphaGo beating a champion Go player in 2016, or chess engines that no grandmaster can defeat anymore. Those stories get documentaries, headlines, entire cultural moments. But this happened 35 years earlier, in a hobby game played on cardboard and paper, with a computer far weaker than the phone sitting in your pocket right now. The questions people ask today about AI: is it fair when a machine can outthink us? Should we ban it from competitions? What happens when it finds strategies we never imagined, using rules we wrote ourselves? People were already asking these exact questions in 1981. We just forgot. Douglas Lenat went on to spend the rest of his life working on AI. The fame from Eurisko's strange, unlikely wins helped bring him serious research funding, and he used it to start work on one of the most ambitious AI projects ever attempted, a system called Psych, an attempt to teach a computer basic human common sense, something researchers still struggle with even today. He would work on that project for decades, almost until the end of his life. But it all started here, with a strange little program that beat the humans at their own game, twice, using logic nobody else could follow, and got banned for being too good at it. If you like this story, subscribe. I'm digging up more real, forgotten moments from AI history like this one, every week.